All right. We'll talk about bodybuilding obsession, right? I feel like bodybuilding, weight training, sort of focusing on aesthetics. It's definitely something that is very easy to become overly obsessed with, right? Now, in my experience, lifting weights has been a 100%, it's been a net positive on me and my life and everything and whatnot. The pros of weightlifting slash, or more so, bodybuilding to be specific. The pros are pretty basics: bigger, stronger, lose some weight, high testosterone, focus, your mental health. We all know why exercising is good for us. I don't have to reiterate that too much. But one of the biggest things, I think that was that I think was the big sort of like mind-blowing moment, was the shattering of self-limiting beliefs, right? I never thought that I could be like, make gains. I never thought I'd feel comfortable in the gym doing curls, blah blah blah, right? I was always very insecure in those environments. But lifting weights, bodybuilding allowed me to shatter that belief, right? Where I was like, you know what? Like it's that feeling of doing something you didn't think you could do. That's one of the biggest pros I would say there is. You're a skinny guy. It's like you don't think you could become a big guy. You're fat. You don't think you can get shredded. Well, no matter what side of the sort of body type spectrum you come from, it's you're gonna have some level of doubt, like, oh, I can't really do this. It's gonna be hard to see yourself in that position. But then when you stick to it, you're gonna break those beliefs that tell you can't do it. Basically, you're just unlocking your growth mindset. And the gym is obviously not the only place this can occur, but speaking from personal experience, that's the first place I truly unlocked that. But there's definitely some cons. Particularly in bodybuilding, there could be some cons, especially as a natural. When I say bodybuilding, I'm not saying that I'm using this as a very like bodybuilding for the layman, right? The average person. I'm not talking about you want to go on stage, get tan, cut hard for 3 weeks. I'm talking like you just want to look better. You want to be more aesthetic. You want gains, and you're just gonna do typical, you know, type of lifting split, right? You're not necessarily a power lifter. You're doing high volume because you want to look good. And I'm also specifically referring to doing this as a natural. So I started to see issues with this when I began obsessing over my looks. I was super, super concerned with how I looked, right? And this isn't the first time I've had this problem. Like a lot of us, I was 19 when I started going to the gym, 21 now, so it's not been the longest time. But, adolescence, you care about how you look, you care about everyone's opinions. It's like, that's all normal stuff. We all know this. But this wasn't the first time that I had become obsessed over something, and more specifically placed my value in something. As a kid growing up, I was super into lacrosse, and I wanted to be the best lacrosse player, right? For me, it was my personality. It's like it was lacrosse or die. That was it. I mean, maybe not literally, but I was super obsessed with it, and I needed to play on the best club teams. I needed to be the best on the team, score goals, and do all these things to make myself feel worthy, right? That was the first sport where I'd ever been praised for being good and was like, "Oh, wow, I'm good. I can, whatever." And so I got obsessed with it, right? But I began to place my value as a person on how well I performed, what team I made, etc. And that was all during middle school and high school. But with the gym, after a while, I started to notice that same pattern reoccurring. I associated the gym with general self-improvement. At the same time I started lifting, I got my first full-time job. I started saving money, started reaching financial, goals and whatnot, right? But I put aesthetics at the primary place of self-improvement, which is not, it's a silly thing to put at the primary focus of your life and the things you're trying to improve in. I put so much weight on the gym and looking good that I thought that that would be the key to being good with women, with having confidence, being liked by people. I don't know. I just put too much weight on it. I associated the gym with like every area of improvement, but it's not true. And of course, you know, I was consistent, I was making my progress, but like many other things in life, not everything always goes to plan. You know, I started to have some injuries and whatever, not like injuries, but prolonged nagging problems that let me in pain. I worked construction, so it was hard to go to the gym 6 days a week and blah, 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 and hard to maintain weight. So of course, I stagnate, I fluctuate, and I would get super insecure when I felt small and whatnot. And it just had a larger impact on my mental health and just overall well-being than it should have. Looks are just a representative of quality traits, right? Now, you've probably seen the videos where like the dude goes up to the girl and he's like, which body type do you like more? And it's like, usually they don't pick the bodybuilder. And again, lifting is not about getting girls. We can get to that later, but you know, you see that the girl would be like, oh, I'd rather have the more athletic, fit looking guy, right? Not that the guy doesn't have muscles and whatnot, but it brings me to this last point. It's that looks are rather a representative of quality traits. The looks themselves aren't necessarily the trait that's being looked for. Like when you see someone who's got like a lot of muscles, you know, you have this sense of like, and you see someone who's big, there's a sense of like intimidation, or like you have like respect for them, very subconscious and primally, right? We don't consciously, we're not elevating people so much based on their looks, but in a sort of primal brain type of thing, right? You see someone who's very jacked, what you assume in the back of your head is physical competence, right? You assume that they're strong. You assume they can defend themselves and other people and that they can attack and whatnot. So that's really what looks are. They're a representation of positive physical characteristics you have. They're, you know, a representation of health and vitality. It's a visual way to discern those things. So you might be thinking, what's the solution to this, right? Where did I find a solution, right? Because at some point, it's like, you know, going to the gym and exercising is something we want to do for the rest of our lives, right? You're not just going to stop at a certain point, but it's within our nature to constantly want to progress. And as a natural, you're going to hit that plateau. You can only get so big naturally. You can only be so lean without like not going mentally insane and feeling like crap as a natural. So what do, right? You want to keep progressing, but you know, do you take steroids? Well, no, because they're not good for you. It's going to destroy your body long term. So the primary solution I've found is to take a bit of a shift in perspective from looking good to feeling good and actually being good, right? So recently I've been a bit more focused on health, strength, and just ability, because if you see me try to do an RDL, like there's old men who can do better RDLs than me because I have such tight hips. I have a very significant imbalance between my right leg and my left leg and sort of the right and left side of my body. A lot of it's from construction, always carrying heavy loads on one side. But, you know, so I have that I can work towards. And in general, I found that at a certain point, who cares if I look better, right? If I go into leg day and leg exercises, caring about how big my legs are, because my legs have been one of my insecurities, it's like, if I keep caring about how they look and I keep pushing them in a way that I shouldn't at the moment, right? And I could say, you know what, screw it. We're going to go with super heavy leg extensions. We're going to squat regardless of what the PT guy said. We're going to do heavy RDLs no matter how bad my form is, because gains over everything. It's just going to, I'm going to keep going into that endless cycle of go hard, get hurt, go hard, get hurt, and then never feel good or look good. I got to understand that. At least lately for me, I've been focusing much more on health and ability. And let's say you're healthy, right? Let's say you don't go through the sort of injury cycle. Focus on your ability, right? Athletic ability is something that can be progressed very far, I feel like. And it would be very cool to have like better abilities. Like one of the best like resources I've looked into in terms of athletic ability and also just injury recovery and whatnot is Knees Over Toes Guy, or ATG, it stands for Athletic Truth Group. There's a lot of stuff you can do within that program. And the guy, Ben Patrick, has a pretty inspiring story. You know, he was like had a bunch of knee injuries in high school, wasn't very athletic, and you see the guy now in his like, what is he, like 20s to 30s? He's probably like late 20s, early 30s maybe, but the dude's insane. He like used to not be able to dunk, I think he said, and now he can like touch his chin to the rim and whatnot. And it's like, you know, you can progress in ways that maybe you're not so focused on your looks, which is a way that you're going to plateau, but there's so much room for improvement in just athletic ability. You know, never mind health and rehabbing yourself and making yourself more bulletproof, because if you don't have that issue of like being injured all the time, then that's not really going to be something that concerns you. But you can progress a lot with just trying to become more athletic. Another thing too is calisthenics. Like sure, you've lifted, you look big, and now you're plateauing. Maybe you're just too obsessed with your looks and you're like, I need to change it up. You know, I need something to progress with that's not going to become an unhealthy obsession, and get into calisthenic skills. I mean, it'd be super sick if like you pull up and you can start doing muscle up strict for reps, or you can do a flag pull or a planche or a lever tuck or like a front lever. Like that stuff's super cool, you know? So there's plenty of things you can progress towards that don't necessarily involve you obsessing over your looks. Another thing too is boxing and combat sports, right? I did boxing for a little bit, and again I stopped because of my hips and whatnot. Something I want to get back into later on, but for right now we're taking a back seat. But it's something I did for about, I'd say 4 months, and it was really fun, and I think that was exactly what I needed at that time. It gave me time to, at least for my lower body, which boxing does involve a lot of lower body, surprisingly. But, you know, in terms of training it, I was able to do a lot more, you know, PT related things and whatnot. And also, when you really dial in boxing and combat sports in general, but I'd say particularly boxing because there's so much cardio involved, you're not too concerned with how big you are, right? Like people in the boxing gym aren't super concerned with who's the biggest. It doesn't matter.
But even in a street fight,
I'd beat the out of you in the street.
no, I would kill you.
Because you're going to get humbled real quick, right? There's going to be some small dude who's going to beat you up when you spar and something, whatever. So you're automatically not really going to assume your aesthetics with like, you're not going to be super concerned with how you look, right? Now, you're not going to look bad boxing. You're going to get diced up. Like I never cut harder than when I boxed. Like it is 100% a way to get super lean. And another thing too is, this goes back into the like, you know, looks versus what's under the hood, right? It's one thing to look good, but doing something like boxing or having a combat sport is going to give you the horsepower underneath the hood. You're going to feel a lot more confident knowing that you have the ability to protect yourself, to protect others, you can fight. And it's also just super fun and engaging. Like, there's so much mental that goes behind boxing. You're constantly thinking about combos, your form, your technique. You know, are you a taller guy? Are you a shorter guy? What's your fight? What's your stance? What's your style? You know, what's your strategy? Are you gonna go brawl? Are you a defensive counter-attack type of fighter? Like, there's so much that goes into it where you get so preoccupied into the art and the science of the sport that you're no longer worrying or obsessing about your body. So, at least for me, it was a really healthy way to keep pushing myself and not, continually obsess over my body and my aesthetics. At the end of the day, all these solutions, whether it's focusing on your health, athleticism, or just progressing in a sport or boxing, there's plenty of ways where you can take breaks from focusing on bodybuilding, because as a natural, you're only going to go so far. And have I reached that point? No, I have not reached the natural plateau. But there's definitely been times where I've needed to take breaks. There's plenty of ways to do that without being super obsessive over your looks.